last year, I think government of Cambodia called on an international conference on ecotourism in Sihanoukville, to which we participated together with other partners. And part of the strategy which was announced was, in fact, a diversification of the tourism strategy in the country to move more toward ecotourism and to include, let's say, some of the recommendations that were done by UNWTO and other partners. This, of course, may not be, may take some time to develop, but certainly I would say the imbalance that you mentioned, I think they are recognized, and there are attempts to address them through a diversified strategy. It's not only the case of Cambodia that happen in other countries, that you have, let's say, a main destinations attracting most of the tourism and then creating some imbalances also in the distribution of the income. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Harold, you wanted to add something?
I wanted to take up this issue of dependency because I think tourism is often blamed for creating the dependency, and sometimes I think it probably does. But more often, the dependency on tourism is because of the absence of other forms of economic opportunity. And really, the only defense against the dependency is to try to develop forms of tourism which fit very comfortably alongside existing livelihood strategies. And I think we've seen successful examples of that, but I think, Luigi, all too often tourism is blamed for creating a dependency, which actually occurs because tourism is the only opportunity for those countries, and that's particularly true, I think, in many of the least developed countries, and that's why we see the apparent dependency on tourism. But it's not that tourism drove out other opportunities, it's rather that tourism fulfilled a vacuum, and I think we shouldn't forget that when the case against tourism is made by those who make it.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Mr. Choi, UNESCO Map ICC and UNESCO Map Korea. I have a question and comments to Marcus Allegre. You mentioned that environmental labels in Peru, in your rural areas. Now, could you tell me, there are many products ecologically or environmentally labeled, I think. Can you give me a few examples, very representative of that area? And what's the certifying system for that product, if any? The quality goods are very, very important to support the local people's economy. And as you know, the UNESCO map has got the quality economy thing is a very, very big thing, and it is very well recognized, so it's a very effective way to have these quality economy things to the sustainable tourism. Thank you.
There are a few labels that there is no single label for sustainable tourism. There are a few labels, for example, the one that we are promoting is carbon neutral label, and this label we work this label with the Ministry of Environment, and it's a UNEP cooperation, a small UNEP cooperation, and this label will be launched in April, and the label is for agro-exporters that they want to have a carbon neutral label. And in order to get this label, they have to finance an environmental positive impact to reduce the carbon footprint. And we are moving this finance to touristic areas, to natural protected parks, according to the map that the Ministry of Environment has in all the country. So we have some areas that have been are priorities for investment and to maintain these forests. So it's a double strategy to fight deforestation and to link this to rural tourism, and also to provide a private enterprise a label, a carbon neutral label. The other label is organic producer for agriculture products like tomatoes, asparagus, and bananas. And this label usually are based on private companies and private certificators or private companies that provide this certification, like SGS or Bureau Veritas, and we use these farms that they have these labels as touristic destiny. So when the tourist goes to these farms, we guarantee that this farm is an ecological farm. They are compost making, they are recycling the wastewater, or they are minimizing the solid waste. So we are consequent with the product that we sell. And there is another label which is provided by Rainforest Alliance. This is the frog, and we have some activity with them, and we train the hotels to get this label, the frog. And so there are several labels that, and we are trying that all these different enterprise that participates in our circuit has a label. But we were thinking in some moment to have a single label for a complete circuit, but we are not in this level. We haven't reached this point yet.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
Good afternoon. Gordon Sillance from Ecotrans, European Network on Sustainable Tourism Development. I was at the World Summit on Sustainable Development, and I think I watched over 100 countries get up and say that they were going to use tourism and sustainable tourism as their development model for the next 10 years. And I thought, well, first of all, that's a lot of competition between each other. And then in those 10 years, what I believe, I think we've all seen is certainly the success of a luxury tourism model. And in that luxury tourism model, there's two elements of it which I'd like the panel to comment on if possible. One would be the issue of low wages in the sector. And whereas the STEP project might have addressed the issue of income generation in those countries, dealing with pro-poor tourism should be fundamentally addressing the inequality which exists in the industry. And secondly, not only the issue of low wages, but the issue of female and child exploitation, which has gone along with that model, and how can the agencies address those particular issues in the future?
Thank you very much. Who would like to start? Richie?
Well, I think on the issue of child exploitation, though a lot needs to be done, I think a lot has been achieved. I think not many years ago, there were still tour operators announcing sex trips involving minors. And I think that today will be unacceptable. There's been, a number of campaigns and a number of initiatives. As I said, the problems still remain, but again, I would say that the industry as such, it's rejecting at least a model of a partner tourist which is based on the child exploitations. The issue of low wages, I think this is an issue, I would say, all across, is not only in developing countries. This is an issue, I think, that even in developed countries, is there an open issues on the seasonality of the tourist work, on the low wages, on the informality of the sectors of the decent work. I would say it is a challenge that needs to be addressed. On the other hand, if you were to look somehow at the positive side, we're seeing, for example, Spain, the country where we're based, which has been one of the countries that has been more badly hit by the crisis of the last 3 years. Still, the tourist sector was the only one that managed to create employment. You may argue, okay, that is not the best employment. But if you look now at new legislations being approved in several European countries with more flexibility for, let's say, foreign employees, etc., Again, I think I will have to see the thing in the broad context. This being said, I don't deny that there is an issue there, and I think we all should be, doing our best to address this, which for the time being is unfortunately a structural issue within the tourist sector.
I think one of the problems about the chartist, I agree with Luigi, I think a lot of progress has been made. The problem is a bit like when you fit a burglar alarm, there's a displacement effect. And I watch, because I go back and forth to the Gambia so much, I saw the success in other countries actually create a problem in the Gambia because of the displacement. And I think, there's still a long way to go. We know how to address it. There's still new destinations where we need to do that. More frightening for me recently, and it came out at World Travel Market, in fact, when Talib was in the room, that there are now a number of countries where it is so lucrative to offer orphanage trips for tourists that there's actually an internal traffic in orphans who are not being exploited sexually, but they are being exploited for profit by organisations which purport to be orphanages when they're not. So, there's still plenty, Gordon, to be done in that area, and I think, the price of sorting that out will be eternal vigilance. I don't think the problem is going to go away. I'm afraid it's a consequence of human beings, and when they're in other people's societies, they think they can do things they wouldn't perhaps risk it doing at home, and therefore that problem isn't going to go away. We're going to have to constantly address it. On the wages, I accept that you can argue that it's a function of the tourism industry that wages are low, and clearly they are low in Britain and in the States and in various other developed countries. That is true. What worries me slightly, though, is those situations where a waiter might earn more than a school teacher, because we have to be very careful that we don't have that effect. None of us would want that to be the case, but we have to be aware that in most countries there are systems of wages and rewards which reflect the local economy, and tourism can't stand aside from that just because it's an international industry. I don't think anybody in the room would want to see a situation where a waiter earned more than, say, a high school teacher. And that could be the consequence of some of the campaigns which have taken place.
Any additional comments? Mark? No? Okay. Next question, please. And then we have here a question.
This is for Luigi. Here. I just wondered, I'm over here. I was very taken by the map and the global footprint of the STEP program. I just wondered if the UNWTO had done any analysis as to the impact of those projects across those areas. And what are as Arab had suggested earlier, what are the failures from which the good lessons have come, or even lessons from very good cases? But what's your perspective on the impact of the STEP program across the globe?
Yeah, I would say an evaluation of STEP as such is work in progress. We hope in the course of the year to have some global results. But as I myself mentioned in my summary of challenges and recommendation, this is probably one of the most difficult areas. Let's say we are able to measure, for example, of every single project, how much is the employment created in the community, how much has been the rise in income for the community, how many people were employed, etc. But I think we know obviously to go beyond that. And I think where we believe it is important also the evaluation of impact is in the replicability and in how this STEP initiative are assumed by strategies at the regional and at the national level. Because otherwise, even if that specific STEP project has been very successful, we're talking about project of under $1,000, under $50,000. So this is definitely not the solution. I think the success of STEP, in my view, remains in on how these show that it's possible to have a business that works, and at the same time, a business that favors the poorest segment of the populations. So I would say that I myself, I had the same questions, but as far as an evaluation as such, we should be able to have, hoping to have one before the end of the year that will try at least if not answering all the questions, to at least address the questions, so have to come to a balance. Also because we don't think that the STEP project will continue forever. I think this has been an experience, and we of course will continue. We also, for example, are concerned that most of the STEP projects now are more in rural areas. There is little in urban areas, so we may also look at some reorienting of some of the projects, but also we don't believe that can be a permanent experience, so we should also look at the next step after step. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
It's a follow-up on Gordon's question on the issue of the exploitation of children. And I want to put 2 points and then revert the question again to the panel. It is indeed a very huge problem, and as Luigi said, it's a structural problem. And when we talk...
No, sorry.
Okay. When we talk about the structural problem, we have to see the demand and the supply. I'm sorry to use these expressions, demand and supply, but I want to say that in the developing countries, in the countries where you have absolute poverty, sometimes you don't even understand what the people are able to do. And the supply problem is very complex, because we are talking about trafficking many times, we are talking about kidnapping, and sometimes we are talking about even members of family doing something. And I think we have a very, very successful example of how you handle the problem on the supply side, and it's the example of Thailand, which has drastically improved the last 20 years on both child abuse, sexual exploitation from tourism, and also child labor. And it was a very, very easy recipe, you know, send the children at school and improve the living conditions of their parents. But still, for me, the part of the problem that it's unsolved, and I know that I'm going to make a bold statement and I might be criticized, but I'll do it. It's not only unsolved, but it's not targeted at all. It's the demand. The demand is coming from specific industrialized countries, very rich countries. And I see nothing happening to target the problem at the demand side. Because Harold said that you have charities involved on this thing. Well, Harold, all these charities are run by very wealthy people from the West. And the juridical system in the West is getting rid of them because it doesn't like them, but it sends them to the developing world and they do what they do. And I don't see any major initiative towards the demand side. So I would like an answer from the panel on what should be done in the demand side.
Yes, Stefanos. Well, I agree your analysis, and as I repeat what I said before, that a lot needs to be done, but I wouldn't be so pessimistic. I think there has been, in the last 8-9 years, a great change in laws that now can prosecute a sexual crime with a minor outside the country of origin, in the country of origin. And this has been as a result of several of the campaigns that were done with ECPAT, with the Commission, WTO, and other participators. So I think that there are now over 20 countries, among them major demand countries, and that is, I think, is a novelty of what it was before, where the crime is punished. You also have, I think, a lot of participation from the private sector. Many of the big companies, Air France and others, you may have seen projecting videos within a flight going to countries where there were a potential for sexual exploitation of children, indicated that this was a crime, that this crime can be persecuted, and participation also at the hotel levels. Accor gave an example of most of their employees were trained, for example, also to have vigilance in the hotels, etc. So again, I think there is a lot to be done. I would not completely share your analysis as nothing has been done on demand side. In my opinion, some has been done, though some still needs to be done.